Welcome to Empower Wyandotte. I'm your host, Jessica Schmidtberger, a third-year doctoral occupational therapy student at the University of Kansas Medical Center in Kansas City, Kansas. In this space, we jump into meaningful conversations about the systems around us and what's affecting health in our community so we can step more confidently into conversations and action in our own communities. Today, we have Susila Jones, the current executive director at Crosslines Community Outreach, an organization serving people affected by poverty in Kansas City, Kansas, on the podcast. Susila is a master of social work with experience in the field and in leadership and administrative roles. And she's here to talk about how we can use ethical practices as professionals, volunteers, and ultimately as members of our community, no matter what our involvement looks like. She also points us to practical ways to invest our time and energy into causes that matter to us, if we're interested in doing so. At the end of this episode, I will provide some resources and information that connects this discussion with evidence so we can all move forward from this conversation confident in what we learn. Thanks for being here. So we've been talking a lot about your roles at Crosslines.
Yeah.
And you, as a Master of Social Work, have experience as a case manager in this space, as director of programs, and now as the executive director. And something that I just want to understand a little better is your experience with individuals in such a variety of backgrounds, both overseeing staff and working specifically with the populations that you're serving, which here is folks experiencing homelessness, folks experiencing food insecurity. Can you just dive into a little bit of what social concerns or dilemmas you've seen as you've worked with both staff and clients at Crosslines, what that's looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite a journey. So when I started here almost 16 years ago as a case manager, I did not anticipate still being here, and definitely not as the role of executive director. So It has been quite a journey. You know, working with people experiencing poverty, it looks different 16 years ago than it does now.
Sure.
And so just the work that we do has changed. And we used to be very much against like using electronic stuff. We were very hesitant to email on clients' behalfs. We were hesitant to do stuff over the phone, have people send us their documents. And over time, we realized we can make people's lives way easier by using technology, which sounds so, now I look back, I'm like, why did we make people come into my office just to give me a copy of their utility bill? And where now we have reached a point where that kind of, where we looked at it ethically differently than we do now. And obviously we have to make sure that there's the safety protections for our clients.
Sure. And there's like a big element of keeping information secure and safe.
Correct.
On behalf of clients and on behalf of staff to make sure that nothing unethical, I guess, is the right word, is happening. And yeah, just to go back to like the different experiences that people are facing, we're working through utility assistance, we're working through rent assistance, helping people maintain their housing, attain their documents, different things like that. So it does require a lot of access to personal information, including bills, including that personal documentation, IDs, social security numbers, birth certificates, those types of things. You also have strong relationships with people across our community, different organizations who support the same folks, the same population that you're supporting here at Crosslines. As the executive director, the person who kind of has maintained those relationships with other nonprofits, what do you see other organizations in our community doing to maintain relationships with clients, to maintain these ethical boundaries, to maintain the network for the folks that you're serving?
Yeah, I think that's where kind of my lens as a social worker comes into play a lot, where we have to respect and maintain the dignity of the people that we're serving. And so sometimes it seems super easy to just get on the phone and call somebody and say, hey, we've got so-and-so down here. They need you to come and talk to them. But if we don't have the client's permission to do that, if we haven't had a signed release of information, we can't ethically do that. Even if it seems like it's more simple, even if it seems like it would make our jobs easier, we really do have a responsibility first and foremost to our clients. And so we build those relationships specifically here in Wyandotte County with Wyandotte Center, which is our mental health agency. And so we have an MOU with them. We make sure that our clients, as we start working with them, that we have them sign a release so that we can talk to their case managers, so that we can make those calls. But it has to always be, making sure that we are keeping the integrity and respect of our clients.
Yeah, I'm looking up at your organizational values right now, and I see inclusion, dignity and respect, collaboration, empowerment, and integrity to build trust. And it sounds like what you're speaking into as far as maintaining those ethical boundaries, maintaining that permission, that client permission, building trust with them in order to say, no, I put your best interest first every time that I am serving you. I'm in this position to put your interests first, your goals first. That person-centered kind of care that social work and occupational therapy provides just aligns with the organizational values that I was able to just read off of your wall that are all over this place.
I love it when what we're doing is reflected by what our goals are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are some barriers that you see in trying to maybe stay aligned with those organizational values that I just listed?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's systematic barriers put in place. Like when we're dealing with somebody, helping somebody get their social security card or get their social security benefits, there's a lot of barriers in place. And sometimes we want to fast track things. Or even give assistance. We have a process for folks to get food assistance or rent utility assistance. And sometimes you just want to fast track somebody because their story or what their situation is really thinks, if you're like, if I could just bypass these 5 safety measures.
And people have this these varieties of experiences. And it's like, yes, your situation is unique and it's special and it's different. And I want to jump through these loops.
But we also have to make sure that we're looking through, obviously, what our funders require, and then also what is equitable, and do we make sure everybody has that same access to fast track, so to speak. And so I think that there are times when rules, I don't want to say broken, but that we should be able to look at a situation and have a way that those kind of rules or barriers can be bypassed, but it needs to be systematic. So we utilize our team, our housing team works together to kind of talk through. They have team meetings. So if there's a situation that rises that says, hey, this person doesn't really fit our typical protocol. However, if we could, utilize this we have extra funding that has less barriers and less rules. So if we could tap into that fund, we could help them. And so it's done in a much more team approach. So it's not an individual making a decision. So you can kind of keep your biases in check, making sure you're not, kind of blind to the situation, but still allows a unique situation to get assistance and support. And so it's really a tough balance because you want to be able to help people who are experiencing very unique situations, but you also have to make sure that kind of the structure in place is maintained to the best it can be.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of a specific situation with a gentleman who has been involved with your services for a very long time. He comes to the kitchen regularly, goes to the market regularly, and he had what are the places? Lend Nation, payday loans.
Oh yeah, payday loans.
He had a significant number of payday loans that were adding up daily, hundreds of dollars of interest. Right. And we saw that. He came to us with that, recognizing I made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get myself out of this. I can't pay my mortgage because I am struggling to pay this loan. And he's also a gentleman who was taken advantage of by the system in a big way, that decision was not his own necessarily. And being able to step in and say, we have a relationship with you. We know that your intentions are good, and we know that you will continue to pursue our services if you do find yourself in a situation where you feel like you need a payday loan in the future, to come to us rather than them, know, and being able to lean into that and say, we can work through this with you and we will continue to support you afterwards so that this doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where having that flexible funding is so fantastic. Because if we relied specifically on just grants that were very strict, which we have those, But because we have flexible funding, we could say, yeah, this is going to prevent homelessness for this person.
Yes.
This will save money in the long run for the system, for cross lines.
And we know that it's going to do that because we have
and that goes to, and it goes to our, dignity value, which is we're maintaining his dignity.
Yes. And choice.
Yeah. And it's exactly. And he can continue to utilize our services. And now he knows to go to one of our team if he's struggling again. So that's a great example.
He came to mind because I just talked to him yesterday and he came in and said, yeah, I actually have money in my account now.
Yeah.
And I can pay my mortgage. And
yes. And it was so much money for him. But when you look at how much money it would cost an organization like Cross Lines or somebody else to rehouse him and to put him into a new place, and he would have still had the loans, we're saving money in the long run.
Yeah.
And for him, it was insurmountable. And for the system, it really was a minimal investment.
Absolutely. And that was the whole team coming together and making that decision for this individual.
Right.
Yeah. So along those lines, what are some ways that, we're talking about these system-wide barriers that you or your organization has made this system kind of digestible for the folks that you're serving, or for even someone like me, a student, to kind of take a small bite and not look at this whole system and be like, man, everything's so insurmountable all the time, but rather taking smaller bites and looking at the barriers as surmountable, as things that we can work through as community members, as individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it can be overwhelming when you look at the system as a whole.
Yeah.
You're like, how are we ever going to fix this? And I don't know. Things can't be fixed, but it is looking at the individual ways and that a difference can be made at a smaller level.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that goes back to that story of, okay, there's this one individual who's having this experience.
Yeah, exactly.
We're seeing progress. We're seeing what that looks like moving forward. So kind of on a community, individual level, what are some ways that we can get involved to be a part of bridging those gaps, bridging those barriers for the folks that you're serving, for our community? Yeah,
I think there is, when you're passionate about an issue, say it's hunger, whether it's homelessness, housing in general, there's so many issues that people get passionate about, and all of them are important.
Sure.
There's often advocacy groups doing work that you can tap into, and you can, there's a great organization in Johnson County, United Community Services, that puts together fantastic educational materials on housing. And so when you want to learn more about it, I go to them. I'm like, I go download what they've got online. And so that's, I think, the first step is getting informed and finding out what the issues are. And then find that digestible place that you can go. Is it, to learn about what's going on in your local government? Is it getting more involved directly with an agency and want to do volunteer work? Do you want to go advocate at Topeka? Because there's lots of agencies who do that and would love to have citizens along,
especially passionate ones.
Yeah, especially passionate ones who can speak directly how an issue has affected them. And so I think it's finding your issue, finding the group who is working on that issue. Immigration is another great example. Like there is some groups doing amazing work, and you can just go to their website and they will give you all the stats and figures, and then you can figure out, hey, I'm a boots on the ground kind of person. When it comes to hunger, I want to be putting food in people's cars. There's a place for you. But if you're like, hunger, I really want to not see so many hungry kids. I want to make sure that more kids have access to food stamps and WIC.
Yeah.
Then, hey, get involved at the policy level and become a policy advocate.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it really is. And everybody has their place in that. I never, we see so much talk about advocacy. You don't have to be the one who is, in Washington holding up the sign or, there's just a place for everyone depending on where your passion is and what you feel like your strengths bring to that table.
Absolutely. So I'm hearing get informed, get educated. Yep. Education
First
is
and one
so
step.
important.
Yeah.
Yes. And finding an organization that's supporting that initiative, what you're passionate about, and finding your niche.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Seeing where you fit into the puzzle, where you fit into the mix. Because we all do have that innate drive to serve, right?
Yeah. And I would add one more to that is talk about it. Educate your friends because if we just keep it to ourselves, then, talk about your passions and say, hey, did you know that 1 in 4 kids in our state are hungry? Just have those conversations. And so the more people know, the more they're going to also grab to that passion. So
absolutely. Yeah. And that's the way that I've learned so much and grown more as an individual. When I say something out loud that doesn't maybe make sense and I get challenged in it, that's a place for me to go to learn more too.
Absolutely. So
I appreciate your time so much. This has been such a
so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
I just love what Susila said about how important it is to bring these ethical dilemma situations to the table with a team, with other people who have knowledge and experience. Maybe that's lived experience or professional experience working with people who have lived experience, but bringing these conversations, the confusion, the discomfort to the table to better understand the situations first, and then to make a really evidence-based and ethics-based decision with the best interest of the client and our community at the center. This has been a learning curve for me as a student because I feel like there's such a focus on individualism and independence in my schoolwork, which is maybe self-inflicted. But I learned in coming to Crosslines that anytime that I tried to make a decision about a case alone, it wasn't a good one because, like Susila mentioned, there are biases. I'm not maybe seeing with clear glasses. I'm only hearing one side of the story. And when I was able to bring those confusions and those situations into the light, into the table with other people who are having lived experiences with the client that I was discussing these situations with, and with the professionals who were around me, we were able to come together and make a team-based decision that ultimately was what was best for the client in those moments. And with that, we're talking allyship in a big way. And there's this word, being an ally. We've all heard it in like a government sense, but in a social sense, it's bringing voices that maybe wouldn't otherwise be heard to the table, using our positions, our privilege, whatever it might be, to ensure that voices are heard and situations are heard. And by bringing lived experiences to the table in making these decisions about ethical dilemmas, these really confusing, complicated, intersectional situations, people are getting heard. And that's really important. So let's walk away with that takeaway, that having the uncomfortable conversations, bringing up our confusion, our lack of knowledge, no matter how humbling it is really important. So grateful for y'all being here to learn with me and to get a little bit uncomfortable in the unknown. As always, please reach out. I'm excited to have more conversations about these topics, and I'll see you on the next episode.